So I'm going to copy those values from update here. Because you want to do it on register as well. And that's for all markers, this one. I'll grab marker location. Actually, we'll just do those two. So here is where we want to set the asset type. So it registers and it knows which type of marker it is. And we want to initialize the asset. So we're going to, it's a selection. What was the function? Get selection, was it? Oh, sorry, we want to go through the interface. So if we should be able to const. So the marker interface, that's going to include the .h. And we should be able to cast get owner. So whoever owns this component should have the interface on it. And that's our entities component. And then we can get the for selection. And we can set that asset to this. So what we're doing there is we're going back to the entities component, reading through the interface. So reading through this interface to access these getters, which will then get the corresponding Niagara or material instance for each type of marker that we're using. And I mean, like I said, it's all the same for this current setup, but it could be all different things. That's why we've got it set up that way. And then, so that's now set the Niagara system. And now we need to create a material instance for our material so we can set parameters on it. So we're going to have material instance. Actually, no, sorry, this is through the interface again. So we're already here. So we can do material interface, material instance selection. Yeah, we want to create our new material instance dynamic. That's got a static function to create one. And we pass in the material and the owner. Then we can set set variable material. This is on the Niagara component now, so this is a built-in function. And probably checked what I called it again. I think it was just marker material. And we our mid. Just checking that marker material, yep. For a selection marker, I'm just going to have the playing one, so that's fine. Might move this cast outside I don't have to keep doing it outside the switch. Righto, so that's that one. I'm going to copy all of this and bring it into destination. And when I say get destination material, that's all good. However, for the destination, I'm going to leave as the default as well, actually. So this is just preview. I just want one demonstration of how you can change the marker through the material as well. So so now we've got the material instance. We can set parameters on it. So we can set the scalar parameter and the name dotted line. And I'm going to set that to 1. So we come back into our material. Marker. So we're setting this parameter here to 1. Preview. Set this to 1. We get a dotted line. That is that. And the last thing on this register, we want to set the visibility to false. Because it's going to register every time, even if we don't have a we don't want to display the marker. It's going to register when we create it. So we'll set the default settings, and then the next time when it actually comes through, the visibility will be handled by the updates. One final fix here, this needs to be the entity component, not the entity itself, which is the owner. So because we implemented the interface on the entity. Oh, I meant entity component. Yeah, so the interface is implemented on the entity component, not the entity. That's why we need to do that. The next thing we need to do is figure out how we're going to implement the actual call to create markers. Yeah, we don't want to do this in authority. It needs to be done on the client. We might have to send it to the client. They do on RPCs on components. Entity creation is server side, so and this is also why people have reported that these decals don't work in server clients, because it needs to be RPC to the client, which we might be able to do that here actually. I think I'll just run this out because we don't use a decal at all anymore. Or we could actually, let's leave it in. We'll do an else. So we've also got a setting to use decal or not. Let's have a look at that actually. Can't even remember, to be honest. So we could make the fallback be the Niagara effects. Entities, framework data, entities. So use decal, we'll turn that off. And then the default will be to RPC, so I'm going to call this client. This is a function we're going to create. Client, decal, create components. So this will be client only components, and what's in this? This is all the entity data, is it? Yeah, so we'll just pass that in. And then I'll put that down here. It's going to need a U function header. Okay. And then the first one, what do I call it? Create entity components. Well, I'll just update that. That makes more sense. There we go. And so when this comes into here, we're going to go straight to the entity component. So I'm going to grab that. So we're on the client now. Here. I can just do a function on there. I can call create. No, I can't. It's not public. Create markers. Let's have a look. Needs this data to be set. Oh, sorry, that's creating the new object. I want to create another one. Sorry, I didn't pay attention to what code that was. I just thought it was a getter. So the entity component, we want to get it. So it should be already created, and we just want to get it now. What if it hasn't replicated yet? Move that up to public. And that should be good. The only issue I can perhaps see is that we're trying to get this entity component straight away, and it hasn't replicated to a client yet because it gets created here on the server, and then the component has to replicate. I think what we'll do is on the, I think we're still using this, entity data, yeah. Yes, in the omrep of the entity data, we could create our markers here. I think this is going to be more reliable. We need to know, so we get world, and we get a thing called net mode. we should be able to tell if it's a client or not. So if the net mode is equal to client. So we also need to check for a listen server. So and then if it's because the listen server will also have authority and be the client at the same time. So you can't just say if not has authority. And I might create markets here. So we know the data is valid on the client. We know we're on the client side. I think this will be a much better way to do it. So coming back to our player controller. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of all this. Don't need to RPC that. I'm going to get rid of all that. And this doesn't make any sense anymore because it doesn't work client side either. So if you do want to use a decal component, I think we're going to have to just save this variable in here. So come to our initialize. We can have a variable here that comes through. Use decal, like so. It's replicated, so we need to add it to the list. Where is it's on? Oops. Here. And then come on right back. All of this we'll bring into great markers. So here, great markers, and we'll go like that. And this will just be get owner now. The owner of this component. And this will be under an else. These switch cases don't like tabbing over. Alright, so that should sort out the decal client side, and this should only be called from one place now. So let's get rid of this. Alright, let's see how that goes. One thing we do need to update is we had the marker trace channels of float by default, so just set that to train. You can set it to visibility as well. I'm going to have mine as train. Like I was saying, if you're on top of actors in the world, you probably want visibility unless they're under the terrain trace channel, of course. Then it'll be fine. So we need to start debugging. So just a couple of changes I noticed in my travels. We might just add a check for the data here, so the entity data asset is valid. And then in our create markers, we'll add that, I think I mentioned it before, the add instance so it shows up in the editor. So we'll be able to look at the character and see the decals there. So it's decals, the markers. So add instance component and pass our component. That's sort of like initializes it for blueprints. And there was one other thing I forgot, and it's in we need to change it on the actual market component. If we come to update location, we're setting the location, which is then going on to update the location of the effect. But what we actually need to do is move the component to that location. So we can do that with set world location, passing our location. And we also want to do that in the update. So here, where we're getting the location, we'll just add in, we'll use that marker location there. That'll move the actual component to the spot where you're going to display it. If you recall, when we created the effect, we set a fixed bounds, and if we don't change the location of the component, the effect will only display within that bounds. So we just left it at default, which is 100. It was a negative 100 to 100, so it's 200 by 200 by 200 box. if you, for example, for the preview, move your mouse outside that range, it just won't display. So that's why we need to move it around as we go. Another option, if you have a small world, you could just go in there and set the fixed bounds to the size of your world, and you wouldn't have to do that. You could just set the position of the effect and it would just work everywhere. All right, so there was one other error I noticed when I was doing debugging off camera, and it was just here on the trace. I obviously duplicated and I didn't try and change the name, so this is trace end. That probably wouldn't have been impacting the terrain the way I had it. Oh yeah, there was one other thing. Come back to the entities component into an initialize. And where we initialize the entity data, we want to call the onRep there. So on a server, you need to call this manually in C++. So although we only really want to use this function at the moment for client, a listen server is a client as well. So this will cover the listen server, and that will, call our grey markers. I think that is it. We will give it another build, and we'll see if we get somewhere now. All right. Looks like I left the default to. I could fix that. Hang on. We come into our material. I just have the line. Well, I think I was explaining it, or maybe it was when I was testing. There we go. So we've got the solid for the selection, got the dashed for the preview, and if we set a position, it should be solid. And they disappear as the entity approaches, which is what we wanted. So it's looking pretty good. You can tweak that distance. You can make it so it doesn't sort of flick out like that. You can just make it so it's sort of a smaller distance will probably make it look like it just becomes that selection. Yeah, that's looking good. Let's try all the groups. There we go. Looking pretty good. Might just have a look why my units aren't. I don't know if you're getting the same issue, but I'm just going to have a look why my units aren't navigating. So characters, blueprints, this character. It's using the default animation. Let's have a look. What's going on with our animation? Number 13. We're using Manny, I'm pretty sure. That's 13. He can be our test subject. Alright, so it's all flowing through. Let's see if move to location is setting a value and we get a ground speed. Let's just move this guy somewhere. Yep. So why isn't that doing our location? Walk run. So this should be. No, it's not even doing this. It's idle. Alright, so it should move. Transition is not working. Here. Well, we know we can ground speed. Let's do this. Yeah, okay, that's 0. Let's just switch this to velocity. Must be just because we're using that AI move to location, it must not set the acceleration, it must only use velocity. So let's use that. There we go. No more annoying sliding around. Cool. All right. Thanks for watching. If you're a Patreon member, I'm going to be putting, I think after this video, I'm going to put up section 8 for download. I do plan to continue section 8 a bit, but it's been a while since I've put up a downloadable version of this project, so look out for that coming out next couple of days. Thanks for watching. See you in the next part.